This is Crossroads with Tal Heinrich.
We begin with major developments on the dramatic border war in northern Syria. Any questions about how those attacks against Saudi Arabia were carried out and why? Pomp and pageantry in the UK today as Queen Elizabeth opened a new term of parliament. Tune in to the Investigative Journal for a fascinating conversation with exiled Iranian journalist and activist Masih Ali-Najad.
My hair was like a hostage.
She sits down with me to reveal her courageous struggle and how she has inspired millions of other Muslim women for freedom of choice. Welcome back. This is Crossroads. The Taliban says it wants to resume talks with the United States. The recordings reveal how the Turkish government turned a blind eye to jihadists crossing the border from Syria and to Syria. Turkish native Enes Kanter plays for the New York Knicks, but he won't play against the Washington Wizards next week in London. First, explain. You're an NBA star.
Yep.
How come you have actual fears for your life once you're out of this country? Why is President Erdogan allegedly after you? You know, just a few days ago, Assad vowed to protect the Kurds from Turkey. Now, looking at this agreement, he's not really going to keep his promise, right? We're talking about many people who were injured in Barcelona when a white van mounted the sidewalk and then struck them in what police said was the most likely a terror attack near the popular tourist area of La Ramblas. This is what we're hearing. We're hearing that 2 people are dead, and apparently there's another unfolding situation maybe connected to this incident. We've got our team of correspondents covering stories all over the world. How do you feel about the discourse here in the U.S. when you hear immigrants are stealing American jobs? Change, regime change in Iran. Just an interesting note here, you know, the name Qasem Soleimani, many people in the U.S. probably heard this name for the first time over the last few days, over the last week, right? But in Israel, every household is familiar with this name. That's why you won't see the debate so much in Israel concentrating right now around the question of whether or not he should have been killed or whether or not there should have been, let's say, a congressional approval before such an action. When you look at these images showing the damage of the oil facilities in Saudi Arabia, what concerns you the most? Is it just inevitable that sooner or later we'll see clashes between Turkish and Syrian forces, maybe even between Turkey and Russian forces? We're talking about Iranian intelligence sites, weapons warehouses, training camps, all of them in the vicinity of the capital, Damascus, or in the Damascus airport. What does it tell you about the entrenchment of Iran in Syria? Lauren, what do you think about Trump's response to Pelosi? Is it a patty move or is it a brilliant political move? Despite numerous refusals, special counsel Robert Mueller will testify on Capitol Hill. Is it clear that Robert Mueller is reluctant to testify to these 2 House committees? And also, by the way, why is it taking so long? We have to wait until July 17th. Can we dig a little bit deeper into President Trump's tweets? When he says we are doing very well in negotiations with China, are there right now any negotiations?
Hey, Tal, not as far as we can tell.
What do we know about the testimony of Trump's former advisor on Russia, Fiona Hill? It's a name we haven't heard so much before, so tell us, or remind us rather, why was she subpoenaed in the first place? Miami, where tonight's Democratic debate will take place. Michael, we'll talk about the candidates in just a moment, but first, how significant is it that the first debates are being held in a state President Trump won by just 1.2% in 2016?
Well, this book, David, is set to be released next week. It's called The Rumor It Happened, a White House memoir. And you know how the saying goes, the best defense is a great offense. So the president is now playing offense. He has warned former National Security Advisor John Bolton that he might have a criminal problem there, since he, the president, views every conversation that the 2 once had as highly classified.
To break it down, let's turn to senior national correspondent Michael Shore joining us here on set. Michael, which side of the aisle seems to be more concerned about fake ads, misinformation on Facebook? Were you surprised? I'm sorry, I can't help but...
Maybe Eli wants to go pick up his daughter and bring her a part of the show. Would that help?
We would love to hear what she thinks about Bernie Sanders running for presidency in 2020. Maybe that's her reaction, in fact.
Eli, is she near you?
She's close enough, but it was certainly my reaction this morning.
Tal, I know how much you enjoy avocado toast. It's going to make that a lot more expensive for you, too.
What, like $20 in New York? That's the price right now.
Absolutely.
Whoa. Something just exploded
We had
in
a
the
bulb
studio.
that just blew in the studio.
All right.
Apologies for that.
I just want to ask you really briefly, Professor, if we ever get there, How do you decide who to compensate and where does it stop? I mean, what about Native Americans, for example? If you had to advise President Trump, let's say, just ahead of the second summit, what would you tell him?
Oh my gosh, I would be, don't go.
Please welcome I-24 news anchor Tal Heinrich.
Let's talk about the AIPAC conference for a second, because this event was once seen as a must-attend place for people seeking to get to the highest offices in U.S. politics. And yet a long list of Democratic candidates for 2020 is not attending this year's conference, or in the words of Vice President Mike Pence from this morning, boycotting it. This is one of the reasons why President Trump has called the Democratic Party anti-Israel, anti-Jewish. He's trying to make Congresswoman Ilhan Omar the new face of the Democratic Party.
But the Democratic Party, they made it easy for the president to do so after deliberating for days over what should have been a no-brainer.
What do you think about that?
I think it's a very dangerous development.
But Senator, if you can explain, where do you see the line cross between legitimate criticism of the state of Israel and anti-Semitism? What's your definition?
Former U.S. Senator Joe Lieberman, the president today really unloaded on some U.S. allies in Europe. He lashed out on Twitter against French President Emmanuel Macron. Foreign Minister, as we just heard, President Trump, he warmly welcomed Prime Minister Viktor Orban at the White House yesterday. But this warm hug was also followed by some criticism, both here domestically and also in Europe. Some lawmakers, they urged President Trump not to meet with him since they claim he does not represent American values. Is it or is it not socialism? I think the United States will flourish like Venezuela is flourishing. Is that what the founding fathers had in mind? Hello, everyone, and welcome to this new hour of our special Israeli election coverage here on I-24 News. I'm Tal Heinrich. Thank you for joining us. The final election results are still trickling in, and the mood, well, it is tense. The latest exit polls showing another neck-and-neck race. Did Trump's actions really go beyond normal support? Because we remember how a Democratic president, Bill Clinton, openly endorsed Shimon Peres when he ran against Benjamin Netanyahu in 1996. And the Clinton White House even organized a peace summit for him in Egypt. Israel's left and right are certainly split over security concerns, but differences over economic policy are nothing like here in the U.S. In Israel, you'll find figures who back workers' unions and fight to regulate big businesses on both sides.
It's a place where every stone sings of the past, where every little street bears the scars of wars and battles.
This is where the Philistines were, and maybe we can even imagine that they were standing here cheering for Goliath to win the battle.
Welcome to the Mecca of superheroes, sci-fi, and comics. There's a family stuck inside a giant skyscraper, so I'm going to save them.
This is Maurice, the real Maurice from War for the Planet of the Apes, and I'm going to transform myself now into an ape and go to battle. Let's go get this bed ape.
And this tournament is only getting better. Guess what? The U.S. Olympic team is here, and they brought the heavy gear. Can you teach me how to curl?
I could teach you how to curl. Ready?
Yeah.
We go forward.
Forward.
Up with the butt.
Up with the butt.
Back.
Back.
And now slide. Let that leg go.
I forgot to push it.
Now, Tal, how many languages do you speak?
I speak 4 languages.
And you've been on television, anchoring or presenting, in all 4 languages.
In all 4. שלום לכם וערב טוב, אתם איתנו ב7 מהדורת יום שני, ט"ז בטבת, כאן בערוץ 20.
أهلا وسهلا أعزائنا المشاهدين، وفي حوار اليوم سنلتقي شخصية أردنية بارزة.
Bei diesem Erfolg ist es kein Wunder, dass so viele große Firmen unseren Sender als wichtige Marketingplattform für ihre Marken sehen.
And the Security Council just about to start.
When you watch this, you think, well, he just gave his tooth to the referee. This fight should be over. You know, something should happen. And then you realize that it actually continued to a 5th round. And then you're like, whoa. I said I couldn't keep my mouthpiece in place due to the missing tooth. I looked down and it was on the canvas. So I grabbed it and I handed it to the referee.
And that's all for now.